we are treated as dying. And C, we are alive. In the name of God, amen. If you watch TV with any regularity, I'm sure you're familiar with language like this. Ask your doctor if Tenebrae is right for you. Side effects may include mild headaches, nausea, vomiting, violent behavior, and premature death. If those rather stark words ring familiar to you, certainly then do the images that we watch while listening to them. Often we are shown healthy, vital-looking people in late middle age. They always seem to be buying vegetables at farmers' markets or getting amorous with each other while painting the living room, or, inevitably, working in the garden with big smiles on their faces. Because of truth in advertising laws, any commercial giving indications for use of a prescription drug must give full disclosure of side effects. This is why we are so often shown these images along with these sometimes startling words: violent behavior, premature death. The joy and the vitality of the images are intended to paper over, to soften the risk, the mandated reminder that each of us, after all, is mortal and fragile. The images speak of personal control, happiness, brightness, organization, while the disclaimers tell a different story altogether. Perhaps you'll agree with me that the overall effect is jarring. Facts and alternative facts. A representation, an image that, while not an outright lie, somehow seems less than forthright. All that gardening, all that smiling, all that flirting. It's a representation that begs the old question: who will tell us the truth? Who will tell us the truth? We're here this morning in church, I think, for an experience that is quite different. To absorb one of the few truths that we can all agree on. We begin Lent each year in a moment of the starkest possible truth-telling. That truth is that we are mortal, fragile, imperfect. Some of us assume that death is a distant peak on the horizon. Some of us, older perhaps, frailer perhaps, feel we are scaling that peak right now, that death is rising ground under our feet and our breath is short. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. I think we hear this in different ways this morning based on where we happen to be in our lives. We're given a little mark of our mortal nature on our foreheads. And we have been invited into a season of focused prayer, of fasting, of self-denial, of reading and meditating. This morning's invitation, at its heart, is an invitation into reverence. Reverence. That's really what we're talking about when we talk about our own mortality and God's immortality. Reverence. That we begin and end in holy mystery. That we begin and end in a God whose love for us is beyond our ability to quantify and to schedule. A God whose love for us outlasts these frail bodies. a God whose love is infinitely renewable, even if our own flesh is not. This is the subtler point in the ashes, a point that the lessons for the day call out to us. Both Jesus and Isaiah discourage the bowing of the head, the showy lying down in sackcloth and ashes, a showy, sanctimonious piety. Paul, in the portion of Corinthians traditionally read on this day, reminds the church in Corinth that to follow in the way of Christ is to follow in the path of joy. But it is a joy that is sometimes not translatable in a wider culture like Corinth, a place that was a wealthy trading and business hub with a prevailing focus on the material, on the here and now. This is why, Paul writes, we are treated as impostors and yet are true, as unknown and yet are well known, as dying, and see, we are alive, as punished and yet not killed, as sorrowful yet always rejoicing, as poor yet making many rich, as having nothing and yet possessing everything. Possessing everything. What Paul, what Isaiah, what Christ himself invites us into today is possession of the knowledge of the love of God. For each of us. It's unmerited, it's unearned. This is the everything they claim. That death is never the last word for any one of us. Now, I don't think any thoughtful Christian ever claims to know categorically what awaits us on the other side of death. Like Jesus himself. We use metaphors like banquet halls, like many mansions. But the work we are about today, together, is the work of becoming spiritually, soulfully capable of death. Capable of death. The beloved Benedictine monk, Brother David Steindl-Rast, puts it this way in his essay, Learning to Die. Learning to die. It isn't primarily a practice, he wrote, a practice of thinking of one's last hour or of death as a physical phenomenon. It is a seeing of every moment of life against the horizon of death and a challenge to incorporate that awareness of dying into every moment so as to become more fully alive. More fully alive. To live more fully, to enlarge your hearts, to claim the love that is your birthright, to magnify that love to the world. This is the deeper invitation of Lent. This is the life Paul preached to the church in Corinth about. This is our chance. And it's renewed every year on this day with that touch of ash on your forehead, with a reminder of how precious is your life and how precious are you. And see, we are alive, writes Paul to the church in Corinth, and to our own church this morning as well. May this season of Lent mean new life to you, to us together. Amen.